the first question is, can you introduce yourself and tell me what you do, and kind of how you got to that particular career, place in your career?
All right, so starting with just the basics, name is Carl Lamar. Attended Clemson University with Jordan for both my bachelor's and my master's degree in mechanical engineering. Did a little bit of PhD research while I was also attending Clemson. Got out of kind of ended that academic life and went straight to industry, working at GE as a design engineer with fluid and mechanical systems. From there, I decided I wanted to learn a little bit more about finance and economics and what drives business. So I took a cost productivity role, and from there, I'm in 3D printing world now, and it's awesome. It's an awesome thing so far. So that's kind of my path. What else?
No, that's perfect. So in terms of research, you mentioned that you did do a master's degree, but did you participate in undergraduate research when you were at Clemson?
I did. I participated in undergraduate research, and our research was, as you know, the H.L. Hunley submarine is in a museum in Charleston, and that submarine was at the bottom of the ocean when they found it. But so the research project was trying to understand the material properties of that steel that has been underwater for, close to 100 years.
Right.
You can't look at a table, or you can't look at, what the standard strength in KSI for steel is when it's been at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean for 100 years. So our project was to develop methodologies for non-destructive ways to characterize the material properties of the steel for the H.L. Hunley submarine.
Okay, cool. How did you get introduced to that research project, or how did you find out about it?
You know what? That's a really good question. I think I sought it out. Coming up to the end of my undergraduate, everything is a closed, well, not everything, a bulk of your undergraduate work is closed solution problems. Whether how difficult they are, they're still in the textbook and they're often still closed solution. So I think I sought out kind of that higher level. Here's a open-ended problem. Try to go figure out how to solve it. And I figured it was a good opportunity to do that as a precursor to graduate school. So I think I sought it out intentionally just for that extra experience.
Okay, so one of the things, common feedback that we get when you talk to undergrads about research and moving from, as you put it, the kind of closed loop problems to the more open loop problems, is this idea of getting into the literature, right, and reading research papers. What was your experience like the first time you were introduced to reading research papers?
It's probably the typical of probably typical of what most new researchers are is mundane and boring, right? It's like you get this list of these 20 papers that's either been given to you by your advisor or your colleagues and say, hey, go read these papers. And I think so early on, you don't understand the importance of reading those papers. And so that was my first, like, oh, this is mundane and boring. However, once you actually start conducting your research, you understand the importance of understanding the state of the art of the field that you're in. If you don't understand the state of the art of the field that you're in, you can't effectively contribute to that field. So started out mundane and boring. Then after a period of time, I understand the importance of it. Didn't mean it wasn't still mundane and boring, but I still I still understood the importance. And it actually becomes pretty interesting once you can begin to compare those literature papers to the research that you're doing to advance the field.
So you also mentioned, an advisor um, giving you a list of papers. Can you talk a little bit about your advisors or your mentors in research and kind of what type of relationship you had with them? What was their impact on your research or your impression of research?
Okay, so I had probably two major advisors. One was my chair, so to speak, and the other one was just um, a strong supplemental advisor. Really good relationship. Actually, both of my advisors, I kind of got lucky. I was kind of their first students when they came to Clemson University. They was relatively young advisors. So it was interesting because I kind of grew with them, right? They saw me grow as a student, and I kind of saw them grow as an advisor. So because of that, we had a very good rapport with each other and could be open and candid. Um, my main advisor was really good. He really, he really kind of set up the your job is to find a gap in this field and fill it. Like that is what that's what sticks in my head, and it's kind of helped me out in my professional world. Also, is basically you finding a gap, and you're using your knowledge to fill it. Um, they provided, obviously the traditional advising input, literature reviews, reading over your papers. But we also, looked at grants together. He helped me apply for National Science Foundation fellowships, which I was able to get underneath him. So it was a really good relationship. We're actually still in contact with both of them today. Um,
That's great. So you talked about how some of your research or some of those skills you learned are actually applicable in your current job. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like what have you taken away from research that you use now in industry?
Um, the biggest thing is like I said earlier, being able to look at the state of the art of wherever you're in and being able to identify the gap and then being able to set up a process of how to fill that gap, right? Knowing that you got to do literature reviews to understand what the state of the art is, to know that you got to begin, with your so-called design phase, and you have to go through this process in order to fill those gaps. And that's what grad school teaches you. It teaches you a systematic process on how to advance the state of the art into whatever you're in. You could apply that to anything, right? You can apply that same rigor and that same methodology to anything you can do. So that's probably the biggest thing that my research has helped me with. My past research helped me with. The second part is, man, after you do like real life research, nothing really intimidates you no more, right? Like it's hard to be intimidated once you do some work and you have to present it to a group of very, very highly intelligent people and allow them to destroy it, right? Once you make it through that process, there's not a whole lot in the professional world that can really make you nervous from that standpoint. Like I had to do thesis defenses in graduate school. I had to do design reviews in my professional world, and they were the same exact thing. It was work on something for a year and a half, 2 years, and you present your findings to a group of very smart people to let them find holes in it. And that translates directly into professional society, the professional world, in my opinion.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. You so I guess this is a two-part question. ultimately, as you decided at some point to transition from a PhD program to going to GE, um, what was that decision like, or what kind of helped you come to that conclusion? And do you do research in your current position at all?
Okay. So I answer the first one.
Okay.
So the real reason I transitioned from PhD academic to the professional world was really, and it's maybe what you're trying to help out with. I didn't want to be pigeonholed into one, you know, very small subset of engineering, right? I didn't want to be for that. Um, so I decided, I think I had what I needed. I obtained the experiences I needed from graduate school. And once I felt like I had fulfilled those experiences, I was ready to kind of break off and try to apply it to other realms. But I didn't want to be super specific
Mm-hmm.
that a PhD would have. I felt at the time a PhD would have made me. So that was one big reason. For your second part of your question, do I do research in my position now? Um, no, I don't do, you know, IRB type research in my position right now. But what I do is that I still am working to fill the gaps. I work on, you know, developing tools and processes and software for what I do now that relies on doing research. I still read journal articles. I still read papers in order to understand what the state of the art is in order to improve, you know, or design whatever I'm doing. So not IRB type research, but I still read research papers to do
Right.
what I do.
Okay. And I just have two final questions. The first one is, what do you think the best piece of advice is that you received as an undergraduate, um, when you started looking for research opportunities or doing your research career?
The best piece of advice I got when I was in my undergraduate was my advisor told me that he'll rather find somebody that's passionate about the topic as opposed to somebody just with, you know, high test scores and and a good personal statement, right? Because he said passion will trump, you know, all those tangibles, so to speak. So how that helped me is that helped me make sure I was guided down the path of something I was passionate about, as opposed to just doing something just because I was doing it. So that piece of advice was probably one of the best that helped me guide what kind of research I was going to do. Is make sure you find something that you're passionate about.
Right. Okay. And then the last question. Um, well, this is a two-part question. I'm sorry. The first part is, what type of impact do you think, in terms of the greater community, or um, those that you supervise, or those that you work with, what type of impact do you think that research has had, on the other people around you, like the research you've done or the skills you've learned? What type of impact has that made?
Hmm.
And well, if you can just answer that, 'cause it's
Okay.
kind of a complex question.
Uh, you know, let's see. What I don't know. That's a good question. And I don't have a, you know, a very objective way. I have kind of maybe a in indirect maybe impact. Um, I think research be optimistic, right?
Okay.
Right. When you do research, I think a little bit you believe a little bit that you can do anything, a small bit, but I think it kind of drives you to have an optimistic view on a lot of the problems, you know, that you may see. So the impact that research has me, since it has allowed me to become more optimistic, I think I influenced other people around me, to also be optimistic and don't be afraid of open-ended problems, and that you can solve it, if you just take the and the correct approach. You can almost,
Right.
solve anything, and don't think that just because, somebody else really didn't figure out doesn't mean you can't figure it out.
Right.
So that's what I try to rub off on the people that I work on with.
Awesome. Awesome. And last question, what piece of advice would you provide to an undergraduate who might be considering getting into research?
Uh, do it. Like, what other opportunity are you gonna have? Really, almost do what you want to do. Like you really not gonna have that period of time in your life ever again to do what you do and be as creative as you want to be to solve a problem. When you go to a professional world, you're bounded by, the bureaucracy of the organization. You're bounded by roles and responsibilities. But when you are fresh out of college, you're fresh out of undergrad, right? You can be almost as creative as you want to be. And it's best to take advantage of that window of opportunity to learn, to grow, and to really be as creative as you be to solve those problems. That'd be probably my biggest piece of advice, is to take advantage of it, basically.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay. Well, was there anything else you wanted to share?
Nah, I think I'm okay. I think that's really it. Your questions were very good. I think it gave a good summary of what the impact of research is.
Okay.